About 3 years ago, in November of 2022, Bomber dropped a bomb of a video called Roblox Oof MP3, which exposed one Tommy Tallarico as a composer in the video game industry who highly exaggerates his achievements. One in particular is claiming to be the person who has worked on the most video games in his lifetime. Tommy used to have a Guinness World Record, stating he worked on 272 games, which later expanded to over 300 games. And then Tommy claiming over 350 games, although it seems the efforts of Bomber caused the related records to be removed from the Guinness website. This led me to wonder, how many video games did Tommy Tallarico actually compose music for? Tommy Tallarico is not exactly someone I find trustworthy. He has been documented to both highly exaggerate and flat out lie, whether it be his Guinness Book of World Record claims that have been removed from their site, taking credit for others' work, like the Joey Curris examples in the Bomber video, to his claims that every single one of his video games live concerts have sold out. Or even, he was an inductee to the New York Yankee Hall of Fame in 2007. That last claim is still on his website as of this recording. I have videos both on the Hall of Fame claim and the concert sellout claim on my original No Swear Gamer channel if you're interested. To see some examples why it can be so tough to determine if music was written by Tommy or someone else, just look at some of the CDs Tommy has released under his own name. The back of his first Greatest Hits CD lists 13 songs, but special markings notify us that 5 of the 13 songs were written by someone other than Tommy, including songs by Mark Miller and Joey Curris. And one song is based on a 100-year-old piece of classical music. That means this Tommy Tallarico CD may only contain about 54% completely original Tommy Tallarico tracks. Tommy's follow-up Greatest Hits CD further muddies the water by mentioning other composers, including Joey Curris and Todd Dennis, but only inside the liner notes and not even on the back of the CD. And now Tommy doesn't let you know which songs are written by whom. For his Advent Rising CD, his name is clearly featured on the front, but on the back it says Michael Plowman also composed the music, although he doesn't elaborate on Michael's involvement. For those of you who don't know, Michael is a highly regarded composer in games, film, and more, and has more credits to his name than Tommy when you count more than just games. Someone shared a message where Michael says he wrote almost all the music, but judging it by Tommy's CD and the fact that Tommy is listed above Michael's name in the game credits itself, even though Michael's name comes first alphabetically, you'd think Tommy did most of the work. For the sake of this video though, I'm going to try to put emotions aside and think like an outside judge, simply looking at what evidence I can find that Tommy Tallarico did sound or music in a game. I'm looking for Tommy Tallarico to be credited by a source other than himself, like the credits at the end of a game or in a manual. Tommy Tallarico Studios is mentioned for a lot of the games he claims he worked on. But since that's not concrete proof Tommy himself worked on the game composing the music or sounds, as he may have paid someone else to do the work, I will keep a separate count for games that only mention the studio and not Tommy himself. I will also limit the use of duplicate titles. Sound effects or music that remains largely unchanged at the core of a game that appears on multiple platforms will only count as a single title. I also won't count it if he gets a special thanks in the credits, as special thanks can be given for little to no work. I've seen pets, dead famous people, and convenience stores get special thanks in video game credits. I also won't give credit for unreleased games. So let's get to it. I will be basing this off of the list Tommy Tallarico gives on his own site, Tallarico.com. On it, he lists, according to my count, 274 games for which he served as the composer, sound designer, and or audio director, with an additional 21 games listed where he served under production, design, quality assurance, or music licensing, giving a grand total of 295 games on his own site, which would still fall under the world record claim of being the most prolific game composer who worked on more than 300 games in a 22-year span. By the way, when you do the math, that is almost 14 games worked on per year, averaging less than one per month. I'm going to start with older systems and work my way up to more modern systems. Since Tommy says his first game he did work on was the Game Boy port of Prince of Persia, I'll start with his Game Boy category. That also confusingly includes Game Boy Color games. In it, he lists 9 games. 5 of those games give him credit for music or music and sound effects. Prince of Persia, Extreme Sports with the Bernstein Bears, which sounds like an amazing unlikely pairing, Author's Absolutely Fun Day, Wings of Fury, and Jeep Jamboree Off-Road Adventure. CMTV Sports Skateboarding with Andy McDonald gives credit to Tommy Tallarico Studios. Cool Spot is listed but no credits are given. Moby Games gives credit to Mark Cooksey, which makes more sense to me after doing all this research. Earthworm Jim gives credit to Martin Walker. Tommy lists Earthworm Jim 2 under the Game Boy category, but there is no Earthworm Jim 2 for the original Game Boy or Game Boy Color. There was an Earthworm Jim Game Boy Color game called Menace to the Galaxy, which may be what he's referencing. That music is credited to Mark Cooksey. There was also an Earthworm Jim 2 on the Game Boy Advance. That could also be what Tommy meant, but Tommy is not mentioned in the credits of that game either. So that gives Tommy Tallarico credit on 5 games, and Tommy Tallarico Studios getting credit for 1 title. At this point, I will point out that it seems if Tommy was associated with the game, and he worked on it in the past, he likes to take credit for ports of that game when it appears on other systems later on, even if he didn't do music for those ports himself. Next, we will move on to the NES. Tommy only lists 2 games, Color a Dinosaur, where he does get credit, and Jungle Book, where he does not. So I'll add a game to give Tommy a grand total of 6 games. Let's move on to the Sega Master System. Tommy lists 3 games, Global Gladiators, Cool Spot, and Earthworm Jim. I could not find credits for Global Gladiators or Cool Spot on the Master System, and Earthworm Jim lists Martin Walker, not Tommy. These are all ports of games he previously claimed to work on, so my guess is he did not work on any of these. In addition, if you were to view his site 10 years ago, he did not even include the Master System versions of Cool Spot or Earthworm Jim, although he did include Global Gladiators. Now let's move on to the Game Gear. He lists 4 games, the 3 previously mentioned Sega Master System games and Aladdin. His site admitted Cool Spot 10 years ago. Martin Walker once again gets credit for Earthworm Jim. Nassau B gets credit for Aladdin, and I couldn't find credits for the other 2, so it's another 0 games added for Tommy. Let's move on to the Sega Genesis, the platform which really helped him gain some fame, where he lists 16 titles. Earthworm Jim 1 gives credit to Mark Miller. Tommy has previously stated that he did work on the game, but for legal reasons, he could not get credit for the game, so he allowed Mark Miller to get the credit instead. But this claim is unsupported by any outside source. Earthworm Jim 2 gives credit to Tommy Tallarico Studios without listing any names. Aladdin, Cool Spot, Global Gladiators, RoboCop vs. Terminator, Madden 96, Spot Goes to Hollywood, Muhammad Ali Boxing, The Jungle Book, Caesar's Palace, Out of This World, Batman Revenge of the Joker all give credit to Tommy Tallarico. RoboCop vs. Terminator lists Tommy as director of music and effects, and even though I will count it, I'm not sure how much work he did since Mark Miller is listed for music. Demolition Man gives Tommy a special thanks for some of his musical insights, but that's not enough for me. However, Joey Kuris does get credit for additional sound effects in the game. Clay Fighter gives credit to 2 other people, so out of the 15 games listed, I'll give Tommy credit for 11 games, lifting his total to 17, and Tommy Tallarico Studios credit for 1, lifting its total to 2. Let's move on to the Super Nintendo. Tommy lists 10 games. Earthworm Jim still gives credit to Mark Miller. Earthworm Jim 2 still gives credit to Tommy Tallarico Studios. And Madden 96, Cool Spot, Jungle Book, and Super Caesar's Palace all list Tommy Tallarico, but due to their similarities to the Genesis versions, I won't give any additional credit. Super Caesar's Palace also gives credit to Tommy Tallarico for being a security guard, but I wouldn't trust him with my $100 deposit. Tommy Tallarico does get credit for Super Slapshot. Wildcats gives credit to Tommy Tallarico Studios. Chuck Rock gives credit elsewhere, and Michael Simon gets credit for Super Slam Dunk. So out of 10 games, I'll give both Tommy and Tommy Tallarico Studios 1 more credit each. Next, I will move on to the Sega CD. Tommy does get credit in the Terminator, and also gives Joey Kuris credit for the song Visions in the Terminator. Earthworm Jim Special Edition gives credit to Tommy Tallarico Studios, which is a first official connection to the original Earthworm Jim. Demolition Man repeats the special thanks to Tommy with no full credit given, so I will add a credit to Tommy and Tommy Tallarico Studios. Tommy only lists Demolition Man as a 3DO game that he's worked on, and he actually gets full credit for this game, bringing his personal total to 20. The 32X games only lists Cool Spot Goes to Hollywood, which was never released, and even if it was, I may not have counted it since it's a duplicate title. Let's move on to a big one, the original PlayStation. For many of the games from this era and beyond, credit is given to multiple people when it comes to sound and music. But as long as Tommy or Tommy Tallarico Studios is mentioned, no matter how big or small the contribution, I will count it. For a very small amount of these games, I used Moby Games when no other credits could be found, although I would be hesitant to use that as an official source for an official record. See, Tommy, I'm really trying to give you some benefit of the doubt here. Tommy himself is given credit for Spider-Man, Tomorrow Never Dies, Evil Dead Hail to the King, VMX Racing, Burning Road, War Games DEFCON 1, NCAA March Madness 2001, NFL Blitz 2001, Test Drive 4, Demolition Racer, Hardball 99, and Golden Nugget for a total of 12 games. Interestingly, I found an interview about the Evil Dead game, where Tommy claimed it took about 5 months of work to complete all the sound and music for it. If some of these games took that long, it seems humanly impossible that Tommy could have achieved the amount of games he gives himself credit for under normal circumstances. But I digress. Tommy Tallarico Studios gets credit for 24 games. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Treasures of the Deep, Pac-Man World, Earthworm Jim 2, Spot Goes to Hollywood, Time Crisis, MDK, Wild 9, Point Blank 2, Apocalypse, Tales of Destiny, RC Stunt Copter, Skeleton Warriors, Black Dawn, Agile Warrior, NCAA March Madness 2000, NHL Face-Off 98, Test Drive 5 and 6, Tilt, aka Hyper 3D Pinball, Spec Ops Airborne Commando, MTV Sports, TJ Lavin's Ultimate BMX, Army Men Air Attack, and Twisted Metal Small Brawl. Earthworm Jim 2 was given credit before, but since I view going from a 16-bit system to a disc-based system to justify enough work done to count as a different title, I will allow one additional credit here. By the way, several of these games have some controversial inclusions, such as finding music that is shared between games, like tracks that appear in both MDK and Wild 9, or Black Dawn and Sonic and the Black Knight, and in the case of Treasures of the Deep, even finding some stock music being used. For more information on these controversies and other Tommy Tallarico fact-checking videos, check out Goose's YouTube channel. But since these games do give credit, and since there may have been some original stuff included with the stock music or duplicate tracks, for this video only, I will still count it, although if I was a judge, I'd ask for more proof before awarding credit. Battle Area Toshinden 3 is listed, but I could find no connection to Tommy Tallarico despite a large list of credits in the game. Test Drive Off-Road 2 and WWF SmackDown 2 Know Your Role give Tommy a special thanks. I cannot give credit for MTV Sports Skateboarding with Andy McDonald, but to be honest, the game does an awful job handling the credits. Power Slave gives Tommy thanks in the 2022 remake, but I could find no other connection to the game. I did not give credit for the demo disc since it's a demo disc, and 3 games, Major Damage, Felix the Cat, and Deuce were all unreleased, so I didn't credit them. So feel free to add them to your own list if you want. So the PlayStation games bring Tommy Tallarico's total up to 32 games, and Tommy Tallarico Studios' total going up to 28 games. Let's go to the Saturn next with 10 games listed. Power Slave and Major Damage still don't get any credit. Earthworm Jim 2, Skeleton Warriors, Hyper 3D Pinball, Spot Goes to Hollywood, Black Dawn, and VMX Racing already received credit from the PlayStation versions. That leaves Mortal Kombat Trilogy and Rampage World Tour, which both give credit to Tommy Tallarico Studios. So let's bump up Tommy Tallarico Studios total to 30. Now we're going to move to the N64. Tommy has 6 games listed. Tony Hawk, Spider-Man, and NFL Blitz 2001 are duplicates. Tommy Tallarico Studios gets credit for sounds and effects for Knockout Kings 2000 and Bass Masters 2000, with Joey Kurris also listed by name. WWF No Mercy gives Tommy a special thanks, so let's add 2 games to Tommy Tallarico Studios, which ties Tommy with 32 games apiece. Now we're going to take care of the category with the most games listed, and that is the PC CD-ROM games, which let's just call them PC games for this video. There are 59 games listed. This category was a real pain to research. Tommy Tallarico is mentioned in 13 games. Advent Rising, Jaws Unleashed, Messiah, The Bard's Tale, which is a modern remake which features an Oompa Loompa style song which totally feels like a Tommy Tallarico thing to write. Sacrifice, Pac-Man World Rally, Snoopy vs. the Red Baron, Super Tofu Boy, which was an online game sponsored by PETA, Line Rider, Devastation, Ultra Fighters, Duckman, The Graphic Adventures, Monopoly Deluxe. By the way, the title music for this game, which was done by Don Griffin, was also used in Cool Spot, another Tommy Tallarico game. Tommy Tallarico Studios is mentioned in 13 games as well. Unreal 2, The Awakening, Unreal Tournament 2004, Unreal Mission Pack 1, The Incredibles Rise of the Underminer, Blood Rain, The Wheels of Time, MTV's Beavis and Butthead Do You, Beavis and Butthead Bunghole in One, Redline, Luftwaffe Commander, Hot Wheels Jets, and America's 10 Most Wanted, which is also known as Fugitive Hunter War on Terror. 21 games are duplicate mentions, in most cases giving the same credit or not credits as before, or in the case of Jungle Book, Aladdin, and Cool Spot are ports of previously mentioned games with no credits given for Tommy Tallarico or Tommy Tallarico Studios. MDK, Spider-Man, Earthworm Jim 1 and 2, The Whole Can, Earthworm Jim 2, Cool Spot, Jungle Book, War Games, Evil Dead Hail to the King, Test Drive 4, Test Drive 5, Test Drive 6, Test Drive Off-Road 2, Demolition Racer, MTV Sports Skateboarding, Aladdin, Hardball 6, which is also known as Hardball 99, Hyper 3D Pinball, also known as Tilt, Power Slave, Agile Warrior, and Golden Nugget. So let's tackle the remaining games. The 7th guess might be my favorite inclusion that I'm not going to count. I could find no connection between Tommy and the game itself. The only thing I could find is Tommy was given credit for some of the sounds used in a making of the 7th guess video in the manual, but his last name is misspelled, and in the video itself, his name is not included in the credits. I couldn't find any credits for Lineage 2 or Extel, but on his website, Joey Kurris does claim he made sounds for those. So if you want, you can add 2 credits for Tommy Tallarico Studios at home. Feel free to do so. For Oddworld, much as Odyssey, both Tommy and Joey are mentioned in this special thanks. I could not find any credits for Dance Online, an old MMO game by Acclaim that is no longer supported, nor could I find any credits for Freaky Creatures, another MMO game that used physical toy figures. The only credits I could find for the Jeff Gordon XS Racing game were at Moby Games, and Tommy's not mentioned there. I also could not find credits for Adrenix, but it does recopy music from Sonic the Black Knight and Black Dawn. Shuttle is an older computer game, and the only credits I could find were at Moby Games, where Tommy gets a special thanks. I could not find any credits for Net Warrior, which doesn't even appear to be a game, but instead an online gaming starter kit. I could only find Flying Tiger credits at Moby Games, and Tommy is not mentioned. And Acolyte appears to be an unreleased game. So using my guidelines, that brings Tommy's total up to 45 games, and Tommy Tallarico Studios total to 45 games as well. There are 25 PS2 games listed. Tommy is given credit for 7 titles. Maximal vs. the Army of Zin, Spy Hunter 2, Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights, And One Street Ball, Street Hoops, Black and Bruised, X-Files Resist or Serve. Tommy Tallarico Studios is given credit in 5 games. Maximo, Ghost into Glory, Knockout Kings 2001, Fight Club, Casper Spirit Dimensions, and SpongeBob SquarePants The Movie. 8 games have already been covered. Pac-Man World Rally, Jaws Unleashed, Blood Rain, The Bard's Tale, The Incredibles Rise of the Underminer, Snoopy vs. the Red Baron, Fugitive Hunter War on Terror. And 2 games were never released, Black 9 and Moto X. Tommy was not mentioned in the massive credit list in the manual for WWE Crush Hour. Tommy is given a special thanks for MX Superfly featuring Ricky Carmichael, along with Joey Kurris. Joey said he did sound for the game, and that may be true, but special thanks are not enough for the guidelines of this project. So that brings our totals to 52 games for Tommy Tallarico and 50 games for Tommy Tallarico Studios. Let's move on to the Xbox games, where 24 games are listed, but guess what? 22 games have already been covered, and the 2 other games, Aquaman Battle for Atlantis and Toxic Grind, give credit to Tommy Tallarico Studios. That brings our total for Tommy Tallarico Studios to 52. Now we add the GameCube with 15 titles listed. 12 of the titles have already been covered. Metroid Prime 1 and 2 have been scrutinized in the past. While Tommy may have been involved a little at the beginning, he was left out of the credits. Later on, it was discovered that Joey Kuris was mentioned in the metadata for several of the sounds from Metroid Prime 1 that were reused in Metroid Prime 2, but he was not given credit. In that case, I would be willing to give Joey credit for Metroid Prime 1, but not Tommy. Add a credit on your own list if you want. That leaves Tonka Rescue Patrol the only game left, which gives credit to Tommy Tallarico Studios. That brings our total up to 53 games for Tommy Tallarico Studios. That brings us to a list of 8 Dreamcast games, 6 of which we already covered. That leaves 2 games, ESPN NBA Tonight and Demolition Racer No Exit, and neither game references Tommy in the credits. There are 5 Nintendo DS games listed. Nacho Libre credits Tommy Tallarico Studios. Baby Pals credits Tommy Tallarico. I could not find credits to Purr Pals and Monster Pals, so it's possible Tommy worked on them, or it's possible he just wants to take credit for all the Pals games, even if he only worked on one of them. Or maybe he didn't work on any of them, but collected the money, kept a cut for himself, and paid Joey to do the real work. Joey on his website mentions that he worked on Purr Pals, but he does not mention Monster Pals. Line Rider was previously covered. So we'll add 1 credit each, giving Tommy Tallarico 53 and Tommy Tallarico Studios 54. For the Wii, he lists 5 games. I'm assuming Earthworm Jim and Earthworm Jim 2 are virtual console ports, so I'm going to ignore them completely. Line Rider's been covered. That leaves Flip's Twisted World and Sonic and the Black Knight, who both give Tommy credit, bumping his total up to 55 games. He has 12 Mac games listed. All except 1 have been covered already. Club Racquetball does give Tommy credit. That bumps his total to 56. All 3 Amiga games are ports of the Disney games previously mentioned, with no proof that Tommy worked on the Amiga ports themselves, so I'm going to ignore them. All 5 mobile games are repeats as well, with the exception of Earthworm Jim HD, and there's no proof that Tommy worked on the HD remake. Finally, we come to 1 single N-Gage title, Tony Hawk, which may include copied sounds from the originals, thus being a duplicate title at best. Tommy also lists 21 games he claims he worked on in roles where he didn't create the music. When I looked into these games, most titles either didn't mention him at all in the credits, or the credits were not available. He received a special thanks in MC Kids and Jam It, and an industry thanks in Guitar Hero 2. He worked as a tester for Robin Hood on the NES, Cybercop on the Genesis, and Chuck Rock for the Genesis, which may explain why Chuck Rock was listed for the SNES. And finally, my favorite role as assistant manual editor for Greg Norman's Golf Power for the NES, which includes special thanks to Tommy's brother Mike, Eddie Van Halen, and Sylvester Stallone. Something tells me the power went to the assistant manual editor's head when he made the special thanks. After hours and hours of research and recording everything into a spreadsheet using my guidelines from the beginning of the video, I give Tommy Tallarico credit for 56 games and Tommy Tallarico Studios credit for 54 games. So even if you combine them, you would get 110 unique games. Even if you added another 10 to 20 games for games that did a poor job of giving credits, or maybe another handful for special thanks or no music related roles, you'd still come up very well short of the Guinness record of over 300 games worked on by a composer. This really feels like a case of someone who would bend definitions to make it appear like he's more prolific than he really is. If a game is a port and someone else adapted your previous work, count that port as something you worked on. If you hired someone else to make music or sound in a game, count it. Or maybe you contributed 5 minutes of your time here and there, giving suggestions, but didn't even put a full hour of work yourself. Go ahead and count it. Or maybe a game is ported to multiple platforms. Count each one. By that logic, Harrison Ford by starring in Blade Runner actually appeared in over 100 movies, one for every director's cut and final cut, every broadcast on cable or network TV, and every format it was released on, from beta to VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and beyond. It's a great way to pad the numbers, and if you copy music from one title to another, that's just being a good recycler. Joey Curris did a great job on his site cataloging all the games he worked on. Unfortunately, currently I can't recommend going there because it showed as an unsecure site in my browser when I recently did. But if it gets resecured, check it out. Games are put in chronological order. Every game has a clear description of what his contribution was, and unreleased games are in a separate category, and he never duplicates games. It lists 120 released games and 5 unreleased games, very similar to Tommy's numbers. Between Tommy's site and Joey's site, there are 72 games in common. Now, Joey is known more for being a sound guy, although he can write music as well. Of those 72 games, 29 games seem to only credit Tommy Tallarico's studios for sound and not music. I wonder, of those 29 games, how many times Joey did the vast amount of work while Tommy simply acted as a middleman. And there were also times when Tommy Tallarico worked with other composers tied to Tommy Tallarico studio projects like Todd Dennis. My guess is these guys are grateful for Tommy for getting them work in the business and helping them support their families. And maybe they signed NDAs for some of the work they did. It's just a shame that in some cases, it doesn't feel like they're getting all the credit that they deserve. And honestly, the game industry could have done a whole lot better job in that area. While pouring through hundreds of games credits, there were times when multiple game testers were listed for a title, but the music and sound credits were very lacking in detail, perhaps only naming a studio like Tommy Tallarico Studios, or even just leaving it out completely. Game testers do deserve credit, but so do those who work in the sound and music areas. I do believe Tommy Tallarico has some talent when it comes to video game music. While some of his stuff isn't my cup of tea, I'm looking at you, Global Gladiators theme. I'll admit to enjoying some of his work on games like Aladdin for the Genesis. Yeah, it's based on pre-existing music, but I still appreciate it. And there's no shame if he only worked on anywhere from 50 to 100 games, maybe even up to 150. Maybe less, maybe more, who knows? But that is a great career in the industry. By overemphasizing one's contribution while underemphasizing or even ignoring what others did is a shame. And that's just not the New York Yankee Hall of Fame way. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you next time.